All right, everyone. Good day. Welcome to this next episode of the Single Source, the product data podcast by pimvendors.com. Today in the studio, we have Chris Jobse, my co-founder, Bart from Crystallize, the CEO of Crystallize, and of course, myself, co-founder of Pim Vendors as well. And we have, well, how topical or how relevant, as always, the topic of AI on the agenda for today. And I think specifically how you can leverage AI and how AI is going to be leveraged in the nearby future. And I want to specifically highlight, well, the sort of two ways AI is currently being used in the product data space. In one way, for your customers and for you personally, trying to discover new products, new experiences, doing your research, maybe even already transacting in a short-term future, in the near-term future. And in the other hand, the building up to that interaction layer from your foundation, your product data, your assets, your tools and IT infrastructure, trying to meet that customer demand that is also rapidly changing. Now, before we go into that, quick housekeeping, as we are recording a live session, you can interact. So just use the comment field on your right-hand side to drop in any comments or questions you might have, and I'll weave them into the conversation. And well, it is a recorded session. So if you want to listen to this later or watch it even, you can do that on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or well, actually any podcast platform that you use. We're live on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I think any place you can get your podcasts. Now let's do a quick round of introductions. Chris, do you want to start, and then Bart?
Yeah, right. Chris Jobsen. I'm started PIM Vendors together with Stefan 6 years ago. And before that, I did a lot of PIM implementations, PIM selections, all kind of functions within the product information management world. And I've seen all the developments from the early PIM solutions to what is up now. And I'm also very curious for to see the latest insights also from Crystallize. We know them already for some years, following them, and a lot is going on in this world. So I'm happy to be here and share my information, but also listen to the information from Bart. So Bart, it's up to you.
Thank you, Chris. Well, my name is Bård. So I've basically been building software companies for the last 7 years. My first company that we founded and eventually sold was a CMS DXP commerce platform, now called Ibexa. And now I'm running Crystallize. So we founded that with kind of building, as we coined this was in 2019 when we coined it, let's build the ideal commerce backend for what we call the intelligent API economy. So we bet on kind of the direction at that point. And what we do is Crystallize basically solves what we call the product universe, which is kind of, we also try to break down the silos between traditional setups where you have a dedicated PIM, dedicated CMS, DAM, and a commerce engine. So we've kind of looked at how could we get this into one source of truth, one backend, one API, one user interface, and one MCP to work with. So it's a little bit different scope than classical PIMs that you would look at, but as we say, the future of PIM is on the edge, and that's where I think the data should live.
Okay, that's super interesting. Maybe start there, right? So Chris, maybe could you paint the picture of where PIM sits in the product data universe, traditionally, or maybe even not so traditionally, from what we see in the market. So how it sits in that product data process from onboarding and enrichment and publication, but also in relationship to all the other three-letter systems.
Of course, it started all with actually the introduction of of the e-com. Then it got a boost. Before that, of course, you had a big catalogs, and you needed to have product data for that as well. But the e-com really gave a boost to the development of all the product content we needed. We needed to have the faceted search, so you needed to have all this information to populate into your, well, at that time, Excel maybe, spreadsheet, into in the end in your e-commerce environment to be able to work with it. And basically, this hasn't changed, but the technical the ways how you do this has changed a lot. In the first place, it started all with extensions on your ERP solution. It was not sustainable because there were quite some limits and in the amount of information, but also in relations between products, which is not so easy to accomplish within the ERP solutions. So you saw new PIM solutions coming up, being able to facilitate this. And then you had the question, what do you, how do you onboard your product data? First of all, traditionally it was onboarded in your ERP, and then you enriched your data because you needed it in your e-commerce environment, or maybe an app, or other output devices. So that was the first step. But nowadays you see that ERP is first. A product is born in in PIM. A product is born in PIM because PIM facilitates all those workflows much more easy than an ERP does. And your ERP then is just another output channel. Don't say it to the ERP guys, but it is what it is. And so a lot of things in the processes also changed. Nowadays, there's an even further shift going on in constructing your product data. It's still needed that you have correct and accurate product data, because otherwise your AI agents will not be able to manage to handle, to cope with this. But traditionally, this has been a shift from actually there is nothing. You had to do it manually in your e-com environment till what it is now with a lot of processes, a lot of automation in those processes.
Right. And maybe Bart, how does that contrast to your vision, where you say, hey, a product data has to live on the edge, or and to do that, maybe we want to combine some functionality and some features?
Yeah. So when I say it needs to live on the edge, it just means that it needs to be accessible within milliseconds, right? So that you can talk to machines, you can have machine-to-machine communication with MCP protocols, which is essentially the interface that agents, or one of the interface that agents use to communicate with different platforms and act on different platforms. And for us, it's I mean, I hate those acronyms because I feel they're so dated. But it's what you need in order to sell a product online or in any channel, right? You need the specs, and you need the product storytelling. You need images, and you need the videos, and you need the pricing and the discount rules and what have you, right? That's what we're talking about. And we feel that belongs in the same domain, because usually it's also the same people or machines that interact with this data. So that's what we mean when we say that your product data should live on the edge, because there is a real paradigm shift going on here, and it's going on in multiple areas at the same time, right? But essentially, the biggest impact for everyone is this. We used to sell to people that Googled and looked at price runner or price match type of services, finding a web shop, going into there and buying, right? and that personal buying, or the way that we used to buy, I think that will still be there. It will be strengthened. You probably have to build a stronger brand presence and kind of really build an experience. But the new thing is that the AI will also buy for you, and
Maybe go one step back, because when you say the data needs to be there in milliseconds,
Yep.
it used to be that you had a PIM, and from the PIM you transported this data to your e-commerce environment. It was kind of disconnected, and this e-commerce environment was optimized for the traffic. But what I hear you saying is that this is not the case any longer. It's the data is in an environment, and that's not being transported or transferred to another environment.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part, because the classical is PIM used to be backend service, right? So it was you created a data model, you shaped all your products and relations and whatnot. Then it was imported into an e-com solution that was serving the storefront. But then you already had the first layer of the integration tax, right? You have to, first of all, transfer the data, but you also lose the flexibility, because you can only handle the data that both of those platforms support. And I believe in the core foundation, which is you need to design a unique data model for each use case. If you're selling car or furniture or plants or books or whatever, they look very, very different, both in terms of product structures, relations, configuration options, what have you, but also in terms of storytelling. And with these, the more platforms you kind of integrate together, you kind of have the least common denominator, is that the English word, where the data needs to match between the systems, right? So what we believe in is that you design a data model that is flexible and solves your use case, and once it's there, it's available in milliseconds to be consumed by apps or storefronts or agents or any channel. And I think that's an important part, because really, to have agents, Claude, Gemini, whatever, to do some magic on your data, it needs to be structured, it needs to be correct, you need to have all the semantics, it needs to be able to access it within certain number of milliseconds. If not, it will give up and not you won't be findable, right? So this is kind of the foundation for all of this to play out. You need to have structured data available in milliseconds and in a format and interface that both developers and agents can read and understand. So I think this is kind of the prerequisite, and I think that's also the shift in, at least that we're betting on. That's how you're going to treat all your product content if you want to succeed.
And what I hear you say about is there's actually flexibility on two layers that you are trying to achieve or where you believe in. So one is the layer of the product data model, where you say, hey, there's a unique product data model for at least every category, but you could even say every channel or every user, right? In a way, I think there's even more flexibility than you just mentioned. Is like there's a difference between cars and fashion, but I would say there's even, if you're, for example, in the DIY space, you could say there's a different description or different attributes that are for the B2B market versus the B2C market, or for the professional versus the amateur. So you need to have that flexibility on the data model. And then also you mentioned the flexibility on the accessibility layer or the publication layer, where it is a millisecond publication or access integration with MCP servers. But it's also a storefront. It's also, well, it doesn't really matter what it is, but it is also different channels.
And it's I usually there's a couple of obvious examples. It's like we've been discussing before, and everybody, would you buy via ChatGPT? Would you trust that channel? And then like skeptical. You want that customer journey. You want to control it, and so on. And I think if you separate it into two, so I use the example often with cars because I like cars, and of course they need to be vintage and they need to be non-eco-friendly and all of those things.
Yeah.
But and that's a typical customer journey where you want that experience. You almost want to smell the petrol and the leather, right? So that's a native app or web or mobile web experience, typically, I would say, right? And you spend some time, you do the research, you come back and you say, it's maybe a little bit too expensive, and then you get the good feeling and you got good financing for it, and then you buy it, right? And then once you get it, then I think you go to Claude and say, for this car, I need the annual parts for the tune-up. Give me the spark plugs, the oil, the brake pads, whatever, right? And it's the same kind of product, but it's not the same product, but it's within the same product, but it's two very different customer journeys. And
But that's more the commodities, which
yeah, right.
Yeah, I would say experiential versus functional buying journey, right? So there's a functional buying journey. I need this book, or I need the car parts for a tune-up, or I need whatever, like very functionally driven.
Yep.
Where you either know the specs or you know the title of the book, what you want, and it's just about the best price convenience trade-off.
Yep.
And then there's the experiential one where I think Bart presented that quite nicely. Now I'm just curious what kind of car you drive. But what kind of car do you drive, Bart?
It's a 1966 Alfa Romeo Duetto.
Well, for your 1996 Alfa Romeo, you need to have that full experience when it comes to the purchasing decision. Yeah. And those are different buyer journeys, right? And you need to serve maybe both buyer journeys. And I do think it could still be that the buying journey for the experiential purchase starts on Claude.
Yeah.
And that could still be the case. So I don't, even if you have a secondhand car dealership or furniture or fashion, which I think all are experiential categories, buying journeys, you still want to be visible, because otherwise you might not even be considered.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point, because I recently, I like music, as for those that can see in the background. So I bought a mixer, like a live mixer and a studio recording mixer, some months ago. And I did exactly that. I started with Claude, did research, figured out what's available. This is what I need, like 32 channel live recording, 96 kilohertz, whatever the specs were, right? And then you went on to discover it in their own channels, and then you see, is this brand modern? You go to the firmware out. You kind of check it out. Are there? Do I believe in this tech? And then you go from this agentic recommendation to an experience-based buyer journey, right? And of course, this is with the agentic optimization and everything, but you need your specs to be understood by Claude. You need to have not just put your specs in a bullet list on a web page. You need to say, this is the recording frequencies, this is the noise, whatever the details of it, because that's what I will use before I land on that experience buying journey. And if Claude already filters you out, or ChatGPT or whatever you choose, you're not there, you're invisible. And that's a very important part. Even though Google released, was it a month ago or so, they released how to optimize your website for Google search, right? And to be available in the AI overview, etc. And it's basically a lot of the same good old things as before.
Yeah.
So backlinks and having structured data, but also one thing that a lot of people have skipped before is the structured product data format on your product pages, because it's not visible, and machines can read it, but Google can read the web page. That becomes extremely much more important these days, that it needs to be semantically structured, and if not, well, you're invisible.
I think even more so now, since Google last week announced that they will include AI overviews in all of their searches instead of just whatever 20% or 50%, depending on which source you are trusting. Yeah, I think we have officially transitioned to the new world where every search is going to be AI first and human experiential second. So, okay. So now we're mixing the two again, right? So there's I mean, just to go back and create some overview, we have the paradigm shift happening in the sort of foundation layer and the ability to create product data and build product data and offer product data, right? From you as a manufacturer, retailer, wholesaler to the rest of the world. And we have the transformational shift in the discovery. So we have the build part, maybe to stay in line with the title of this session, and the discovery part, which both are rapidly changing. I'm not sure if we've ever seen such a change happen on both sides of the spectrum. I'm 100% sure that it has never been this fast, right? I see reports like that say, oh, yes, every month in AI is a year in normal development or normal years. Of course, the launch of ChatGPT, which I think officially was ChatGPT 3.5, was a huge thing. I have the feeling that since November last year, there has also been a market shift in the way AI is being approached. How do you guys see that?
Yeah, it's to take the word again. So for us, it's we've been ready for this, and like everything's been structured semantic via fast APIs and all those nerdy bits, but we've been testing the AI agents, LLMs, continuously, and used to be like from 3 years ago up till last fall. It was like, yeah, can you do translations? Can you generate some content? Yeah, that's nice, which is nice. But what changed was basically Opus 4.5. I think that was October, November last year. Then it really shifted for us, and then we could roll out all of the underlying infrastructure in weeks, not in quarters. And basically what we've seen is we have everything from building our service itself. So we build the service, which is the platform you would start doing data modeling in. The data modeling and the analysis is powered by Claude with the skills and MCP capabilities in Crystallize. So creating a sophisticated data model goes from weeks to, let's say, hours, or you can have one shot it in 2 minutes, right? And you can move so much faster. And the same goes for building all the foundation, ingesting the data. If you have a spreadsheet, and you have a spreadsheet because all enterprises are built on spreadsheets, you can have AI analyze that and structure it and then import it. And without developers having to actually write a dedicated import, or if it's 2 or 3 weeks of an import that breaks, you can have that, and that's working today. And then also on the operational side, right? Once you've gotten the products in, and now you just want to add SEO optimized fields for these 50 products. You just ask your agents to do it, and then you just approve it, right? That was so the whole workflow for building, and even for us, which is ultimately is a storefront, right? So even building the storefront is now accelerated with AI powers, and it's such a dramatic shift in the way that how quickly you can have a really good result that you can continuously iterate on, of course, but what does that mean? And to me, it's like, now we can do the things that we just dreamt about before. Oh, I want to have a microsite for this subsegment. What if we could experiment at all subsegments? Or what if we could really focus on the checkout process, and let's use this data and make it self-learning, and then take that learning and improving our product data, doing all of those things that many have talked about before. Maybe Netflix has done it, or Amazon has done it, or Zalando, right? Where they have thousands of developers and dedicated teams to optimize one part of the shopping journey. But now you can do it, and we really see it that from our end also on developing the software itself. We're going from shipping features weekly, which is pretty quick, right, to having a major feature shipped every day, right? So this magnitude of speed, I think it's we haven't really seen that before, and it's we get a lot of discussion then, is the AI code and the data models, are they, do you have to spend too much time on review? Is it crappy code, whatever? Well, it used to be that, but we've done massive pull requests and kind of massive changes that just need a review, but they needed extremely little change after that. So it's such a game changer.
So what's the future of a PIM solution in general? Is it still needed? Because everybody can kind of produce them with
Yeah.
AI.
So I think the answer is yes. If you call it PIM or what you call it, that's a different story. But for us, is you need to have, for whatever future we have, you need to have the structured product data. That will never go away. If you don't have the specs and the story, you can't present your products in whatever future. And that needs to be correct, and it needs to have the beautiful imagery and whatnot, right? That will never change. And then what I see as the future of, if you call it PIM platforms or whatever we will call it in the future, is for us is we want to provide the guardrails so that you can achieve the innovation on top of the platform. Because yes, you can build a PIM service, and you can use AI to build it. You need to know how to build it. You need to know how to maintain it, and it's a lot of cost in there. But that doesn't bring any value to you if you're selling Nike shoes. What you want to do is to use this platform with all the skills and the tool sets that we have today, so that you can build the ultimate experience for me as a customer when I'm looking at the new Nike Jordan Air, whatever, and then you want to use the agentic shopping to just get new shoelaces or whatever consumable would be the analogy there. So I think that will never go away. It's like, and the example I use, can you build a database with Claude? Of course you can. You need to know how to specify and design a database, but you can do that. But would you? You just need a secure way of storing and managing your data that you can trust, that is a managed service, and then you want to build your application on top. So I see that that's the same for a PIM or commerce solution, where the backend, we need to be modern and tick all the boxes so that you can actually build with these tools. And we need to provide a guardrails, right? Having something scalable, you can handle millions of cart operations per hour, all of those things. And that's kind of not the job of a brand. If it's Nike or Mercedes, right? They want to build the best possible car configurator to configure your car and have the immersive experiences. And they need to build on top of a modern platform that enables them to run faster and achieve more with less, which is what we're essentially seeing now.
Yeah, maybe
you need to know also your data. You need to know the structure of your data. You
Yep.
need to know the relations of your products and the data connected with it. Otherwise, you cannot make
Yep.
such an environment where you can compose your end product, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
And-
need to be a
and-
great.
PIM solutions, traditional PIM solutions, when you say, okay, I have a PIM, my data is correct.
Mhm.
It may be correct for humans,
Mhm.
but is it correct also for machines?
And the second question follow up there is, and is it accessible?
Yeah.
In the right format, right? So one thing is it needs to be correct. It needs to be semantically structured. So which basically means it's self-describing. It says, okay, this is the engine. It's whatever horsepower, whatever volume, etc. But then it needs to be accessible in the channels where the agents look, and that's both for like call it the search engine side of things, but also when you want to operate on it, if you want to reorder or buy something or interact with your account, those interfaces needs to be available. So I think the classical, the historical backend services, that those days I believe are gone soon-ish now, because the demand from the agents, but also from the market, is they want to do this. They want to be able to, if you have a saw and you want a saw blade, I just want to, because I'm not sure exactly, there's 1,000 saw blades in the store. I need to make sure that it matches exactly my needs, right? You ask your agents, I have this saw, Festool, whatever, and then I need a saw blade, and then it will recommend, are you going to use it for oak or plywood? Yeah, it's oak. Okay, then this is what you need, right? So you need to be available in those channels. So I think that's
needs to have the right information.
Yeah,
because then
two sides of the story, and if you fail on either, you're not there.
Yeah, maybe there's a question from the audience as well, but it's an interesting one from me as well. Is how do you control costs, right? So if you put an agentic, fully agentic model on every task, either from the development part or the enrichment part or the well, even maybe the discovery and search, though I don't, that doesn't seem to be an issue currently for individual users. But anyway, how do you control token costs? Do you control token costs?
Yeah, so that's a big question, and if you start from the customer side of things, because this is really where you don't want to, let's say something publicly facing, right? MCPs or CLIs or whatever the acronyms are for talking to agents, so we always have these acronyms, right? Those are typically not token based, right? So you can have exponential growth in traffic, but you don't burn any tokens. So in terms of talking to the MCP, this is just a way for the external agent, which means that the customer that is shopping or the third party that is accessing your MCP, they will burn tokens on their end, but they will interface with the MCP. So that's the first of, which is typically we do a lot of work on the, okay, how can you use LLMs on the storefront itself to be smarter or have more hyper personalized and things like this. We did a live stream on that particular topic also, where it's like maybe you can pre-bake, you can kind of make sure that you don't burn tokens on the storefront itself, which in most cases you probably don't want to do, at least not for now.
No.
And the second is for the internal tooling, because there, I mean, from us, we have, we're using it at every level. From like, if you get an RFP from Chris with the spreadsheet, we drop it in our internal tool, Vantage.
Yeah.
It has all the skills, knowledge about Crystallise, and it fills it out. and then we just review it and send it back, right? So from sales to building features and building plugins, etc. So I think it's there you will have, and we've had many stories like where companies have kind of pulled back on rolling out agentic coding in their company because they have thousands of engineers and then the bill explodes, right? And there I think it's a good point, and it's probably underutilized in those organizations, so that they buy the premium max $200 per developer for everybody, and there's 10 that actually uses it in a really, really good way.
Yeah.
So I think that's an issue. And then for us, so we're a small player, and what we see is like we don't really have to extend the product team at the level that you would think. So $200 a month for Claude Pro Max versus 1 hour of consulting.
Yeah.
That's the number, and then the job of the developers is, of course, for us it's senior developers. They really need to know what they're doing: architecture, reviews, security, all of those things. So in that respect, the math is pretty simple. It pays off. We can ship with the same resources in days rather than weeks. That's the first. But where it probably gets a little bit tricky is for the agentic work, right? Which means that, let's say you roll it out in an organization with hundreds of employees, and everybody is using the agentic workflow to please, what was my login again? Or a bad example, but just burning tokens without producing value. Versus if it's like, okay, I got this spreadsheet, could you analyze it and import? I need it to go here, and then I need a price list to be adjusted with 25% and create a campaign.
Yeah.
If that can be done in minutes rather than days or weeks, then it's a very, very simple calculation. But I think there is both for us to provide the right engine. You don't need Claude Opus 4.7, which is the most powerful one available right now. You can use Sonnet, right, which is a much lighter and less cost for a lot of the tasks. Maybe for the data modeling or the complex tasks, you need the full power. And then if you just want to find these 50 SKUs and add them to a price list and adjust it by 20%. If you have the MCP skills, you can use a lighter model for that. So it's also this model optimization that we see there, but it's definitely a concern, and definitely for larger organizations, right, where it quickly multiplies, and especially if you kind of have this, if you pay a license per user, if you kind of have non-value producing tokens that are charged. Yeah.
Maybe to contrast that with a slightly different version or vision even is companies, and I agree, it's usually smaller ones or smaller teams where they actually look at, are you burning more tokens on a per month basis than your salary, right? So if you're not leveraging your time with AI at least as much as I pay you on a monthly basis, you're wasting time, right? So you should have 3 Claude Code instances open, all doing new feature development, while at the same time doing research with Claude Cowork. I don't know, just burning tokens and being more effective. And I say effective, then maybe you're not doing your work as well as you should, right? Just as a contrasting approach. And because I don't think that the truth is there, right? Because there's a lot of waste there probably as well. But I do think that there's a huge speed up that you can make with tokens. So controlling costs means maybe cutting down on token budgets, but maybe it also means not having to hire another junior developer or junior data engineer, or not having to hire a consultant or whatever it is that you're not hiring, because you can now just ask AI to give you the research, or even with Cowork or the agentic workflows, do the tasks that you would have that person or consultant do. So
Mm.
these are interesting times for sure.
Yeah, but just one simple, to take the example again, right? I get 80 question RFI from Chris, right? And that you know, that's, for those that don't know, that's the most boring work you will ever do, is filling out those RFIs. And that sometimes used to take days, maybe longer, right? And you have to really commit to this. And now, since for us, like we've trained the AI on understanding all of the features and even analyzing the source code. It knows everything. And here's our communication framework and how we're talking about things. And then it generates the answer in, let's say, 3-4 minutes. And then you spend the next 10 minutes, 20 minutes reviewing, just checking, yeah, this is correct. And then you can reply. That's a lot of value. And if you consider then the salaries of sales or pre-sales people, right?
Yeah.
It's such a no-brainer for us, at least the way we use it. But I see it when you roll it out in a larger organization, especially if you have seat-based, like Claude, right? It's you have seat-based, and then it's the $200 a month or whatever plan you're signing up for. And if it's not utilized or used in an efficient way, and a targeted way, then of course you're wasting money, for sure.
It's also like if you look at a more granular level, and I'm curious how you have architected this in Crystallize, Bart, is being able to do this on a per task level, right? So if you have, I don't know, just a translation task that is small context and haiku, right? The cheapest Claude model, or it's ChatGPT Nano. If you have a more complex task, it is, but then you need to do more orchestration or configuration, or however you want to call it. That would also be a way to control cost, is just to fit the right model or fit the right tool
model
for the job.
Model optimization, right?
It's the same in real life. Like you don't get a bazooka to kill a fly, right? So that's a similar. Well, don't say this. I think the U.S. Army is now using Patriot missiles to stop drones, but hey,
that math does not go up either. But that's another story.
That's another story.
But
so
on what level in the organization do you put this? Because you can ask this on the individual level, and they don't care because they're just doing their job. And if it's Sonnet or another model, it's not really they're not really interested maybe in that. Or you have to organize this in the organization. Like you say, okay, developers, they can use this model, or others have to use this model.
Yeah. So I guess it's and this is a very big question also, right? Because one thing is, if you use Claude Code or that type of tool, you can choose the model that you want to operate with, and that is up to the individual that is operating it. But a lot of what we also do is we roll out targeted agents. Like in Crystallize, you can have you have an agent that you can ask anything, which has a certain model, and then we have other tasks which are simpler, and then we have chosen the mapping for which tasks should use which model. Like we have generate a topic map, which is classifications in Crystallize, based off of this spreadsheet, and please fill in with 50 more. You can use a pretty low-end model to do that, right? But so it's kind of up to the tooling, and we do this continuously, where we're mapping what we think is the right model. If we're going to build let's say build some code, like a plugin to Crystallize to be more efficient to operate with a certain type of spreadsheet import, whatever, doesn't matter what it is. Now these are built with Claude, and we have a skill to build a plugin to Crystallize. But then you need the Opus 4.7, right? You get less errors. It's one-shotted typically, and this is quite exciting because we've been talking about this employee experience that you can customize the interfaces and things like this, but it didn't used to be budget for that, right? We said you can do this in pre-sales and have your own dashboard and whatever, or sidebar, do this, and you can do it. But then once you have to have a third party develop it, it usually costs a lot of tens of case of euros, right? And now you can have a description, you can have a plugin built and iterate it on within the hour and have it available for the full team.
Yeah.
And then if you use it for these tasks, I think the cost of the token for that, it's there's no way that math doesn't make sense.
It is interesting, and it is indeed. Where do you compare it to? Do you compare it to different models? Do you compare it to different vendors of different models, or within like Claude versus Claude Sonnet versus Opus versus Haiku, or do you compare it to the human alternative, which would either be not doing it because no one knew how to do it, or you'd have to get an external consultant explain it, but then it would still be faster to just spend 3 days in Excel to do it. I think what you're saying, the use case that is, I think, the most exciting bit is the unlock through the MCP. It is basically the combination of the two paradigms that we discussed, right? The building of product data from the ground up, and also the how do you get to product data from a user perspective, and that could be, of course, a customer, but it can also be an internal user. And with MCP integration, you can build those custom interfaces that you just keep alive for a week. Like they're just there for one task, maybe some regulatory change, or a request by someone, or maybe even just a customer who wants a specific catalog built for them for a sale, and one pre-sales thing. I don't know. But there's so much you can do now. The creativity is unleashed in that sense. I'm just curious what people will be building with that. And I think the use case that you're describing is an amazing example.
Yeah, we definitely see. I mean, and it's changing almost on a week-by-week basis. But we're doing stuff we didn't want to prioritize resources for before. And of course, it depends on what area of the industry you're in. But for us that are building software and integrations and data mapping and all of those things, Claude can do a lot of this, a lot more efficient and more error-free than developers. So, and we see it even down to, like, one of the things we launched internally, it was a month or two ago. So we use Slack for internal communication and with all our customers and partners. And if you get a bug report or a description of this here doesn't work correctly, we just comment at Claudette, as we call her, and describe the problem. And she has access to all the source code and comes up with, usually within 2 or 3 iterations in Slack, either a workaround, meaning that the customer has done something wrong, to use those terms, or a fix to how we can fix it in the software. So just that, because troubleshooting and finding bugs and all of those things, it's changed dramatically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm very curious where we'll be standing in 6 months from now, and that's also something where, I mean, the AI layer changes every 3 to 6 months. I see the people changing maybe every year, where they change their workflow and are able to absorb new tools or new ways of working to their current work schedule. Below that sits an architectural layer, an IT layer, that maybe shifts every 3 to 6 years, or maybe even longer. So I'm really curious how this is going to play out in practice, where some companies are able to capture this wave of AI and keep up with the changing models every 3 to 6 months. And a large group of companies or organizations is not going to be able to keep up because their architecture is not fit, and they're going to it's going to break somewhere. I'm very curious where it is going to break.
Yeah, and I think that that is on two levels, both that organizations using software services like ours and our competitors that are building software services in the same space, right? And I think because this is about technical depth, right? They cannot utilize the powers that now are available to everyone if they're not ready for it. And to me, that's a leadership failure. If you haven't seen this and you haven't acted, and if you aren't ready today, and then if you're not really quick to be able to turn around today, if you're not in that position, I think in 12 to 18 months you're irrelevant. You're not there, and that's for the customers. It means their products are not visible. When I search for the mixer, they might have the best mixer in the world, but they're not available in the cloud that I use to filter, or the ChatGPT I used to filter out before I start that emotional journey of buying it in a beautiful shopping experience. And for the vendor side, it's this is expected of the customers. The customer's perspective is changing so fast in terms of what they expect when they're looking to buy a new platform, because they've heard a hype, they've seen the news, and then they expect that level of functionality and enablement and timelines from their vendors. So
but then also that's on the technical part, but
Yeah.
the organizational part and the data quality part,
Yeah.
that's all built around governance, and whatever solution you have, when you don't have this in place, it's not going to work, because then it's on. There's no target, there's no direction you are going as a company.
I think I'm very curious as well. In a way, it is not new, right? So it used to be like if the same with e-commerce, right? So
It amplifies now because it's going in that fast that a small thing is really exploding, instead of gradually, and we can keep up with that and we can change things, but it's really exploding.
okay, agreed. Okay, so what would you advise to our listeners? So if we're coming up for time, so tomorrow, do they need to throw away their whole architecture and just switch to something that is fit for the AI world? I'm a bit scared for our customer base, where a lot of customers basically reach out to us with a request for help with their product data, because they all see this AI revolution coming. But there is a caveat. They say, you can give us any advice, but please don't touch the IT architecture, because we're not going to change anything there. So I'm a bit scared. But how would you guys answer the question? What would you change tomorrow?
I think one of the things is that you need to realize, first of all, that there is an issue, and that you need to start really make your data clean and make your hygiene in your data correct. And then you have the semantic structure, the taxonomies, product relations, because there's also a big lack of this kind of information. You need to keep, you need to capture this as well in your organization, and of course it needs to be supported by good tooling. You cannot do this in a spreadsheet any longer.
Yeah, and I think if as you said, please don't change the IT architecture. Well, then it's a pretty binary, because then the question is this IT architecture ready for today? Which is this is not tomorrow, right? This is happening today. If the answer is if they cannot support it, well, then you have the sunsetting has started, right? Because they will become irrelevant, not because their products are not great, but if they're selling online, if they're not able to serve this new channels. They're not discovered, they're not found, and they cannot support the agentic commerce that is coming. And all of these workflows in terms of improvements in efficiency and in utilization of the tokens, getting value out of the tokens. So I guess that's the question you need to ask. Are we able to serve all of that beautiful product data today in a format that the channels that we expect today and tomorrow are using? If the answer is no, well, then you need to look at some big strategic changes there. So I think it's as simple as that, and it's actually not rocket science. It's, as Chris said, you need the structured product data, and that needs to be clean. All the relations, semantics and taxonomies and all of that. And then it needs to be available fast in the format that the agents are speaking, and both to read, but also to be able to operate on it. If you're able to do that, then you're pretty well set up for the future that is upon us today.
All right. Well, with those words, I want to thank you, Bart and Chris, for joining us today and sharing your advice and your vision on well, I wanted to say the future, but the future is already here today. It's just distributed unevenly in this case. Let's see how the coming 6 months turn out, and let's check in 6 months and see where we are. I want to thank the audience as well, and if you want to listen more and well capture the next episode of the podcast, either with me and Chris and Helen, or another guest or Bart, maybe in a few months' time when we are revisiting the prophecies from this podcast episode, be sure to subscribe, be that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks a lot for joining us today, and have a great day. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.